Everybody, welcome back with the Purplatypus is the name, and welcome to another Path of Exile 2 video. I am going to say that this build is done. Now, is any build ever really done in Path of Exile? It seems like no. There is still plenty more improvements I could make. I'm not even fully res capped yet. I'm getting there. But I'm probably going to keep playing the build, but I'm not fully even res capped. So, but this is really about as strong as I think I'm going to make this character. I want to start playing some other characters as well. There's still a lot of stuff I want to try. Then this will basically be my late game grinder to get currency and Atlas points and stuff like that. But what is this character? What do they do? And what is the build? This is a totem warrior. We are a Titan totem warrior. So the main reason I went Titan was because the 50% increased small passive skills, very powerful. And because the reason why I think this is powerful is because every node melee damage that increases your totem, the slam totem. You've got the AoE, the area damage somewhere else. It's like over here. Area of effect damage that increases your slam totem. You've got like attack damage that increases your attack, your totem. Totem damage increases your totem damage. It's like melee damage, attack damage, AoE damage, totem damage. They're all things that just increase your totem's damage. Pretty much everything that increases damage, it increases the totem damage. Because the totem is kind of interesting. It is an attack. Even though it kind of acts like a spell and it scales like a spell, it is considered an attack. And so it doesn't scale with your weapon like other attacks, so it has its own weapon. So it scales like a spell, but it benefits from all attack style things. So this is the Totem Warrior. Basically what you do is, before we get into the gear and the passives and the decisions I made, is you basically are going to smash totems down, and then you're going to do this ground. And that's basically it. This is the entire build. You can do this, and then you can smash these down to do more damage. I can make it more visually impressive if I get certain, like, right? So if I want to put this on, I can make all my attacks look cooler because they'll hit more times. But so it's like, oh yeah, it looks cool, but it actually makes it weaker. But yeah, that's basically what the entire build is. It's actually a 2-button build. I did put Hammer of Gods because I thought it looked cool, and I do have Stampede. I literally never use it. I could easily just take these off and pretend they don't exist and just be a 2-button build. So first, let us go ahead and look at the passive tree here. So I think the Ascendancy is probably the most interesting part. So you can see here, I'm going with extra armor and extra HP. I actually think overall this is pretty weak, the extra armor. However, because I'm not doing any kind of energy shield, any type of evasion thing, I actually feel like this is super important for survival. I just wanted to be armor. And I know armor is really bad as of the time of recording this. However, I just wanted to do it. I think this right here, you get it once if my armor was better and I didn't need to worry about so much survivability, I would knock these two off, and I would knock the HP off as well. And I would get this because every time you use every time a shockwave totem attacks, it has a 20% chance to do an additional attack. So basically 20% flat increased damage, because 20% of the time you're doing double damage, right? So, and then you can also come up here, and then it's every second slam skill you use. And if you take a look here, the shockwave totem is a totem AoE melee slam skill, physical duration Nova. So that will actually ancestrally boost it. And I think this will greatly increase your damage. But right now, I just need to focus on survivability. The one that's not negotiable is Hulking Form, because pretty much all the small passive nodes are good, and making them 50% stronger is good. So if we zoom out further, I've done a lot of tweaking to this over time. So originally, like, I just pathed completely different. And I ended up, basically, as I went to the late game, I started taking off certain nodes and taking on certain other nodes. Damage became more important in the late game. When I first got the maps, my damage was so high it was irrelevant for like all the way up through tier 13, 14, even 15 to an extent. And then as I got to increase difficulty level on the Atlas tree, like the boss things with like +3 difficulty and like the pinnacle bosses, my damage started to fall off. So I've started removing things like area of effect from attacks and started focusing them more on things that are like actually damage. So I've tweaked quite a bit here. So you can see I pathed around here. The notable passives that are going to be good is Blood Magic. Removes all mana. You convert it to life costs. This is super important because the spell is so expensive. If you're going to take a look here, we'll get into the gear, but the Shockwave Totem is currently level 35. It takes, like, if I didn't have this on, this would cost 747 life per cast. When I have this on, it goes down to 449 life per cast, which is still over 10% of my life every single cast. Luckily, we can counteract that. But with the mana, it was just, I originally didn't have this, and I spent so much effort getting enough mana to cast my spells. I had mana to cast my spells, dexterity to increase like my attack speed and stuff. All of it, I was like, this is just stuff that needs to go away. We simplified. We brought everything into HP. So now all our HP is our resource, and we just have a lot of HP, armor, and HP regen, which absolutely gets you there when you need to. Is it the strongest thing? Probably not. So, but it is definitely very, very viable. So blood magic, very powerful. Obviously, all the totem stuff, right? Most of the stuff is optional. You know, is damage here different than damage here? Not really, but there's a few nodes here that attack speed is kind of nice. One thing really quick before we get further into the passive tree, if you're going to hold down shift and you're going to look at the damage of things like, oh, this brings up my 4,000 damage per second on slam. You have to kind of be careful, specifically with slam, because it really highly values attack speed, and it's not taking into account how many attacks your slam will get. So for example, if I give my totems 10% more attack speed, it'll look like my damage goes way up, but it actually doesn't, because the totem only gets 3 attacks before it disappears. You'll see it start charging up its 4th, but it'll never get there. So the attack speed is pretty much irrelevant because it's tied by its limited duration. It's not irrelevant, but you want to make sure there's basically breakpoints for attack speed. So don't be deceived into thinking that this is more powerful than it is, because I did that. I've learned so much about the game since starting this build. So came over here, got blood magic. The other really powerful ones are the ability so your hits can't be evaded. This was a huge damage increase for me. I don't need to deal critical hits. It's fine. But I was having so much accuracy problems. I was trying to get accuracy on gear, accuracy on my totems, going over here. And, I was like, you know what? This node fixed all those problems. My totems don't miss anymore. Never. I love it. It's one of my favorite nodes in the entire game. Then we did just pick up a bunch of strength over here. And again, like, none of these are that crazy important besides the totem stuff. The ones that are big are brute strength. If you see, we're sitting here at 595 HP. Giant's blood. This is a very late game perk. I did not use this until what level am I right now? I'm currently level 89. I don't think I used this to like level 87, 86, 87, because I didn't have just enough strength to actually get weapons to equip that were good enough. So just you don't need this at all early. I would skip this side probably early and come back to it later, because this becomes much better in the later game when you actually, like, if you have 300 strength, it's much worse than if you have double that, right? So I would say that grab these all later, but also a bunch of strength coming up to these. Plus 18 strength is so huge. And then the other one that is super important, I'm not sure how I feel about iron reflexes, is polymathy. Is basically 10% increased attributes, and it's because we need this, and we need to, in order to use Giant's blood, basically just to get the strength to actually use the stuff that we want. Now we're sitting at about 600. We're sitting at about 600 of strength, 4,375 life with 300 per second HP recovery, and I believe it actually goes up depending on what I have equipped. I believe we can get more out of that. Nearly cap resistances, not quite, and 19,559 armor. So almost 20,000 armor. Now, one thing I want to point out here is it's actually these rubies. 20% increased armor, increased life regeneration rate, increased totem damage. These, I have a lot of these. This is very, very, very important for actually increasing your armor. That way you don't have to go all in on all these nodes, because the nodes aren't that good for the most part, but just getting a bunch of like overall regenerate, armor. Again, I was specifically going for like an armor style build, so it was important to me. And this one here is also giving, it just increasing the effect of all these, so it's giving them more and more damage, but it's also giving them 2% increased armor. What's really important though is that 2% armor actually becomes 3% armor, because the Titan, the small passives get this effect, and we as a Titan get 50% better small passives, so it actually increases it. Now if you actually got the 3% armor, I believe it would go from 3% to 5% armor per node, because you would get 2%, because it's an 80% increase, because you have our initial 50 and another 30, but that's kind of neither here nor there. So here's my overall skill tree. Are there things that can min-max in it? Probably. I spend a lot of time looking at it and kind of adjusting certain things depending on what I need. a node that's been popular for me to go to every now and then. This is a node that I use sometimes and other times not. Basically, 25% of your armor applies to fire damage taken from hits. It's been like when you're going up against certain specific, very fire heavy bosses, I'll usually pop that on. I'll switch something out that's like a little bit of damage just for that. It only works against the small fire hits. Big one-shot fire hits, because the way armor works, it doesn't usually help that much. But perfect example, if you're going up against a hard version of like the Candle Beast guy with the fire breath, you know, from Act 1, but you're fighting him like on a high-level map, that flame breath does like 0 damage. Like literally, it does. You could sit there for the whole flame breath. It does under 10% of my life. It's actually fantastic. So this is the idea. We're just getting damage and a lot of armor. So currently, we'll actually go into the gear. But the main thing is get a bunch of strength so we can actually meet our equipment requirements, then get a bunch of damage, and then try to get as much survivability as we can in the form of armor, even though it's not considered good because I like it. So when we're taking a look at the gear here, I'm not sure how much more I can actually improve a lot of this stuff, but what really makes the build, I would say, good is because the shockwave totem scales like a spell, and you can get its levels so high. So you can see here, I got a bunch of nodes. We'll go over that in a second, but it is level 35, basically because you can double equip two-handed maces or one-handed maces, but basically get +5s. You can get easily, pretty cheap, +5 level to all melee skills on a regular one-handed mace in the late game, which is just fantastic. So I would absolutely be doing that until you get to the late game and you get enough strength to equip the two-handed weapons, and then I would go to +6. Obviously, I can +7 is the highest, so we can get 2 more points. This can go up to 37, and I believe 38, because I believe my amulet can get another point there. So this can go up to 38, which is a ton more damage, but I don't think I quite have the HP to maintain that level of cost, but also it's very expensive to make that last push, and right here I'm pretty good. So when it comes to your weapons, the only thing you really care about is that you can equip it. It has the highest level of plus level to melee skills, and then the only other thing you care about is plus strength. Plus strength gives you HP. It'll make your damage go up from the other nodes that increases your damage and things like that. So it's just a good stat to have, and it'll help you meet the equipment requirement as well. Other weapons pretty much identical. The only thing we care about is the plus to melee skills plus strength. So we're getting +12 melee skills here. Our helmet, on the other hand, is something that I'm not super impressed with. We're basically just going with armor, strength, resistance, life. Very, very simple here. Armor, strength, resistance, life. Our main armor as well here is pretty good. We have armor, strength, resistance, life. And I do like the expert steel plate. You get less overall armor than you do with the other plate, the iron plate, or the iron armor, I think. I don't remember what it's called, but this one gives you regeneration per second, and it's very important to actually have this because the regeneration per second is effectively your mana as well. Even if you had more life and more armor, it doesn't matter if you can't afford to cast your spells. So the regeneration is very important on this build. The hands, what we care about is plus melee skills here, and then you guessed it, armor, life, resistance. On the boots, I actually gave up 10% movement speed to find these boots because they had better armor, life, strength, resistances. Belt is the thing I'm going to replace next. Belts, for the most part, kind of suck, it seems like. I want to get the one that makes my rings better, but here we are. The amulet, I actually am pretty happy with. 6% max life, super important. 31% increased armor is super nice. 23 strength, a little bit of resist, but we don't really need it that much. But also that +2 level to all melee skills is the most important thing. The dexterity is going to waste. However, you know, it's hard to get everything you want all at once. And then for rings, I'm using them mostly for resistances. There is some life, there is some strength. You guys know the drill. There is some life, there is some strength, but mostly resistances is the goal here. So on my weapons, I do have increased attack speed because this does count as an attack, so that will help it out a little bit. This counts as an attack, will help out a little bit. But overall, you don't really need sockets in there, but it's just nice to have a socket that actually helps. For the rest, I'm just getting % life as much as I can. Even then, my life is only at 4,300. There are characters with way more life, especially gemling mercenaries. That's not what I am, all right? I'm making do with what I got. So as for charms, I typically just don't want to be frozen. The belt still needs to be improved. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this. Again, my resistances are all pretty nicely capped, you know, not way too much over. And I'm even pretty high on chaos, which I would like to finish with 20,000 armor and stuff like that. Let's take a look at our skills here. So we have a couple skills equipped, but really for our persistent skill, time of need, this is actually very much It's not good, okay, but it's very nice. It's very frequent that you'll find maps that reduce your ability to heal, and this will actually bypass, like, oh, you have 90% less regeneration. This will allow you to not just have to give up on those map modifiers. You can still get through with like careful planning, and you definitely want to have one thing because something will give you regeneration life per second. And then this one is actually pretty good because you can just decrease the skill duration. It's whatever. It's not that good. Overwhelming presence, I'm not super impressed with. There's honestly not a lot of persistent skills that I have found useful. Time and need has been the best. And then all these could literally be removed. I tried scavenge plating. It just doesn't matter. We kill things. We don't break their armor. Earthquake is actually pretty good. So Earthquake is good, and not because it's damage it's good. We do not care at all about its damage. Why we care about Earthquake is that the slam will explode jagged grounds with it. It'll do damage based off the shockwave totem. So we could do something like this, and we could do something like this. So this will hit this, and this will deal damage based off the totem's damage. So it's actually doing pretty good. So we just want the jagged ground to last basically as long as we can. But what's really good about this is that it starts to multiply, right? So if you have 3 totems, each 3 of these is triggering all 3 of these. So we're getting like three attacks from totems, and each of those 3 are doing 3 attacks on those 3 things. So it's like 9 more attacks. And so the damage on bigger enemies that take up a lot of space can very, very easily stack up to an incredibly high degree. This one, we just want it to last longer. We want it to increase the duration, right? Increase the duration, and then just a little bit faster to get them down. Now for Shockwave Totem, this one, there is so many abilities gems that I like using on this, but there's a few that I'm using as currently as mainstays. So 35% more physical damage, more is an important word. 35% more, it can't do Chaos and Elemental, it wasn't going to. 35% more physical damage. Supported skills have 10% less attack speed. Again, the attack speed doesn't matter because if you take a look at my totem here, I have it timed out so it gets 3 attacks. 1, 2, 3. And let's say I boost it by 10%, right? So now it has 10% more attack speed. 1, 2, 3, and then it sits around for 1 more second, and then it goes away. So the 10% attack speed is essentially not a big deal. 40% less cost is, I would say, essential unless you're a Gemling Legionnaire, because I believe you can get a passive 30%, which is huge. But for what we're doing, this is basically necessary so you don't die. If you take this off, you can take a look at your HP in the bottom left, like you just kill yourself in like 30 seconds. Or if you have this on, your life regeneration is actually not quite higher than it currently, but it is enough where it's not really something to be concerned about. This is also, I would say, pretty much a mainstay in even in the early game. If you are still on mana and you have the ability to maintain it, being able to go from 1 totem at the start of the game to 2 totems, and then eventually up to 4 totems. You could even get a 5th totem with, I think, a amulet, but I'm not super concerned about that. But every totem, you can see here, makes the other totems better because they all increase the damage of their other totems. So getting that 5th one might actually be really important, but overall, just having more totems is good. Even with the less duration, it doesn't really bother me because I tend to move them a lot anyway when you're trying to move through maps. And then this is pretty much my flex slot here. This is what I use. When I'm doing maps, I do 40% more area of attack. And then when I'm doing like a boss or something, I basically switch. I take this off, I put this on, and it brings it up from 46,000 to 65,000. And the attack range is way smaller. Way smaller, but it doesn't matter when you're fighting bosses because it's easier to keep these on bosses, and it hits them like way harder. Very good. And again, I actually decreased damage because I got to tier 15 maps and my damage was higher, but I ended up dying a one-shot to everything, so I've had to repivot to a little bit of survivability. But that is the basic build. We went over the passive tree, we went over the equipment, we went over the general strategy, and we went over basically the stats. We're gonna do a map also, just so you guys will be able to see kind of what it's like when you actually use it in action. A few things I want to mention though is I do think that this build is in a good spot in the sense that it can handle all the content that I've handled in the game, that I've done in the game. Like I'm doing tier 15s, no problem. If we take a look at my Atlas tree, of course, I'm not like a pro or anything like that, but I finished the Atlas, that part. I've done the pinnacle. I'm still trying to find the pinnacles for these guys, but I've done a bunch of these as well. Overall, it's not been too difficult at all. I've had a great time. This is DS Lily's tree that I saw in her video, and I think she got it from someone else as well. So this is just why I'm using that. I didn't care too much about min-maxing that, honestly. But yeah, just a couple tips I would say is the reason I think it's kind of positioned well is because I think armor is about to be buffed. I would be surprised because it is kind of bad. So it's actually not a terrible time to pick up some of these like really powerful gems. I think this gem right here, 20% armor, 9% regeneration, 16% totem damage, just cost me like 5 exalts, maybe something like that. Like not much at all. Most of this stuff is pretty cheap to get. Even these hammers are pretty cheap right now. The armor is like, I don't think I've spent more than, I think I've spent upwards of 20 to 50 exalts trading for one piece of gear, but that's the max. I've never gone to a divine for anything on this build. I think 50 might be, I don't even think I've done 50 effectively. I've spent more than 50 because they didn't come with like the soul cores or something like that, or maybe I've thrown in a couple extra exalts into it afterwards to get a few last rolls on it. So I've probably spent an equivalent of 50 on a piece of gear, but as far as trading, getting the bases before I add the soul cores and stuff, like 20 exalts is pretty much it. So it's a much cheaper build to run than a lot of the other popular stuff right now. And the damage is crazy, honestly. When you go up against these big bosses, it's not broken millions and millions and millions of damage, but honestly, you're getting hundreds of thousands to millions of damage pretty darn easily. And you know what? This has been a lot of fun for me. I just wanted to play, I wanted to play a warrior that used 2 big hammers and then refused to ever swing them. I have this on my back because I like the light radius. It's just dumb, but that's just the kind of gamer I am. I just like having a little bit of light radius or when I'm walking around a map or something where I'm not fighting. But then when I want to fight, it just switches back right away, right? So yeah, that is the build. The only other tips I want to reiterate is be careful when if you're following this shift button. You know, you don't want to just trust it necessarily. The attack speed sometimes is going to be mostly irrelevant on your damage per second, because like, wow, this increases my damage per second. The game must be smarter than me. In a sense, maybe it is, but also like accuracy rating. Like it doesn't matter now that I got this, but it was giving me huge DPS before I picked that up. And then when I switched to it, I kind of got a respec. I had so many points over here doing nothing that I wanted really. But yeah, don't worry about the Giant's Blood early. Just kind of wait till you get enough strength for it to make sense, and then you're probably going to pick up the poly thing to get the 10% more, and then you'll come over here and then you'll get it. Because if you get your strength, if your strength is too low, it's just going to be too expensive. It's going to be like 20 divine. The +7s that are with a small requirement are very expensive. But you can see here, there's still probably more min-maxing I could do. We still have another 11 passive points to go at least, and we can get improvements here, here, and here. On top of the fact that this is already clearing content and it's felt powerful, great DPS, is also there's likely to be buffs in this direction, right? There's likely to start buffing armor, and my survivability has already been pretty darn decent. And if armor gets a buff, I feel like this character will be really tanky. And yeah, overall, that is my build. This is a homebrew build, all right? I didn't follow a guide. I do want to give a shout out to, I think it was Zizarin. Just the concept of using Giant's Blood to double hold the hammers purely for the stat stick of it, of the strength and the plus to melee skills to summon totems. I don't think it was necessarily totems. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember it was like, oh, you could double wield 2-handed maces and you can get plus melee skills on maces. So you can get a lot of melee skill. And so I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. So I wanted to go with a Titan Warrior. I think Gemling Mercenary might be better, but this has been fantastic, and I've been very happy with it. But that's all for today. Go ahead and enjoy the mapping experience, and you can kind of see what the build is like. We're not going to do any juice map or anything. Like, I'm not going to do, like, events and stuff, because I want to get to this tower. So we're just going to throw in a tier 15. I don't care what kind it is. I don't know. This is a... We'll put something corrupted. I don't want to do something too easy. Yeah, I don't want to do attack speed stuff either, not when I'm barely paying attention. All right, you know, let's just do this, whatever this one is. That's fine. From corrupting them and making them go down. No, it's level 79. Okay, we're good. So overall, you're gonna notice that it's not the fastest clearing by any stretch, but it is pretty darn safe. Even with only 4,000 HP, the things that you have to worry about tend to be bosses, not really like, or just like a bunch of like, if there's like a bunch of death effects, you run into them, yeah, you'll probably die, right? It's not gonna, 4,300 HP is not gonna keep you from dying from being stupid, but it is plenty to keep you alive from just basically avoiding attacks. And like even things like this, like, yeah, like, see, this is fine, right? Like, and these are tier 15 minions, so like the little stuff is totally fine. Like, it really don't need to worry about it. Especially, sometimes I switch on. I'm one extra point away from a node that lets me use my armor for fire. It's like 25%. It's not much, but anything that can help reduce fire damage against. Sometimes if you're going up against like a really high level fire boss, it's kind of nice to throw it in. But yeah, you don't need to be too careful. But obviously, with the way armor works currently, you still do have to be careful. What I'm most hopeful for is that this build will be strong. Like, it's going to get a big buff, basically. If they make armor better, it's just going to make this 20,000, almost 20,000 armor, like, good. Because armor does suck, but it does its job. It just, you have to invest really hard. If I invested this hard into any other of the defenses, then I would have, like, way more, you know, stuff. Let's see. Sometimes I have to check. I have my low area of effect on with high damage. There's so many gems in this build that I like. But yeah, look at those. It's nothing, right? I don't even remember you. Gold-plated dudes? You must be from the Molten Vault. I do think it's a lot of fun to see a bunch of different enemy types. There we go. So here's like a yellow. You can see like they nothing, right? You do got to watch out for those kinds of effects. So, you know, like I said, the build, like the armor won't save you from being stupid, but it will save you from basically, as long as you're paying attention, it'll keep you alive against pretty much everything until you get to like really hard level bosses. And the really hard bosses have actually been pretty fine for me so far, if I'm being completely honest. But again, this isn't a showcase about like this being the most crazy build of all time. It just that the whole point of this video, which I hopefully I've discussed already, but was to show you that someone that is new to Path of Exile can make a homebrew build and get to the point where you could easily clear tier 15s. Super like it, no problems. You don't usually die, and if you do die, you know, it's not honestly the end of the world. I mean, I die from time to times. I'll look up how to actually see how many deaths I have, because it's going up, and we'll take. I actually don't know the commands, so we'll take a look at like the deaths and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, this is not a hyper clear map, but it honestly is fun, and I think it will get a lot better and a lot stronger against bossing, especially when if armor gets a buff, if they actually address it, because everyone's saying armor sucks. So I hope they don't just nerf the other things. I hope they actually give armor a little bit of a juice to it as well, because it does like at 20, it hasn't felt good until I hit about 20,000, and at 20,000 it still feels like not insane, I'll be honest, but it does feel a lot stronger. The 10 to 20,000 was a big jump. Here, we'll do a little health potion there, right? One thing you could do, like if you care, I'm more of a patient gamer. If you want to blast a bit more, you get more movement speed, you get more cast speed on your boots and stuff. You could actually get like you could get through this way faster than I am right now. What am I slowed by? What are you doing? But honestly, I don't mind just moving a bit slower. And I know maybe that's the anti-blaster in me, but I don't know. I'm not in a hurry, you know? I'm just having a good time. But also, I sort of got this map is the biggest map I've ever done. Every time I do this level, I'm always upset at how big it is, but it is the one I have to do to get to that tower. So I don't like the tower system myself. I think it would be nice if they just removed, not the towers, keep all the towers there. I love this method of the towers, but remove the stages from the towers. When you reach the tower, this allow us to put a tablet in it right away. You know, I just don't think they need to be stages, if I'm being honest. Let's see, sometimes these guys are rares and you just can't tell until you get up close to them. But it's not, we're good. But yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like, tier 15s have just been a breeze. They weren't a couple days ago. I ended up getting a bit stronger, getting enough armor, because I was having issues with these just, like, dying. I had to play way more, like, defensively and be way further back and kind of play more tactical, but now I have the option to play much less intelligent and still get the job done. You can see here the currency's not great. I'll take the tier 15. You guys attacking me? Get over there. These guys were definitely one of my deaths earlier when I didn't have a lot of armor, because they just did a ton of damage. All right, there we go. We got 2 more legends. I call them legendaries. I don't even know why. They're like literally just called rares, but something about I don't know. There's something in my brain that puts them at the legend thing. There we go. I haven't really come across very many versions of, like, with my with my Spark Mage, if I came up across like a hasted guy that drained mana, that was rough. I haven't really had too many issues with like any combination of stuff. There's been some like incredibly strong combinations that are like would be problems for anybody, I think. Where the hell is this? Yeah, right, bro. It's not that bad actually. But like I went up against a rare who had like powerful minions, but the minions were all buzzards, but they were also reviving minions, and I didn't know where he was. So I just had I had an army of mosquitoes chasing me everywhere I went, and I couldn't find out where the stupid rare was because like they chased me from like a really far away spot. But look at that. I mean, nothing, right? Boom. I mean, that's a level 79. That was a tier 15. We'll take the Exalted Orb, call it a day. But yeah, so I mean, that's just how you would get through a normal map. I mean, again, we were never even in a little bit of danger there. As long as you're just playing and keeping your eyes open, you will have no problems with the Armor Warrior. Anyway, guys, that's all for this one. Thank you very much. For Platypus is for Ploutipus. I'll see you on the flip-flops. Bye!